I had, my mother had them all in a bookcase in the living room, and of course, when she passed away, honestly, I couldn't even go back to the house, but everything was just picked up, and I don't know who got what, but they all had beautiful, portraits, and I thought, sure, I could get them, I could find them from the relatives, but I did the best I could.
Well, I think you did fantastic. I really appreciate that. We got and I got a picture of Dwight, not in his uniform, but I got a great picture of Dwight in there, too, so she was able to send one of him as well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so and it comes clear through the phone. So I mean, the little she might have just taken a picture with her cell phone, I assume.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, then she did fantastic. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you just taking the time with me for this. I was so excited talking to you the first time that I didn't take the notes the way I should have, and I'm going, I forgot a couple of things, and I wanted to have a couple nice quotes of what you said. But if you
don't, shame on you.
I know. You were telling too good of stories, and so I wasn't focused enough on anything other than your stories. All right, so we could start. Today is what? It's June 27th of 2019, and can you tell me your full name?
Norma Farris, Farris. Stevenson.
Okay. And when were you? Go ahead, Norma.
And of course, my married name is Stobbe, Stobbe.
Excellent. And when and where were you born?
I was born in Richmond, Kentucky.
In what year?
In 1930.
1930. Excellent. And can you tell me a little bit about your mom and dad? What were their names and where were they from?
Well, my father was Robert O'Brien Stevenson, and my mother was Leela Mae Burgin, Burgin was her maiden name.
Okay.
And they were married in Richmond, Kentucky, and we came to Michigan in 1937, which I believe is something like 82 years ago.
Okay. Just a little while ago. And so
it seems like a little while ago.
Do you remember Kentucky as a kid?
Oh, I remember a few things, yes, very much. What I remember most is that we came on the train. My father had come on here to Michigan, and we followed, and we were to follow him immediately, but the Cincinnati River flooded something fierce. And we had to wait, I think, I don't know how long, maybe a week. And I know when I got on the train and Mama got us all settled down, and I finally said, well, why aren't we moving? And, of course, the train had been going forever, and I didn't realize that we were.
Oh, my goodness.
Then a train moved, And I remember that. I don't remember much about anything else when we arrived. Of course, we arrived of all months on February.
Oh, boy.
But we, we had an aunt and uncle, and they lived out in Salem. They had a big, huge home out there, and I know we went there. Now, after that, it's hard for me to remember.
Sure. Who were the aunt and uncle that were out there in Salem?
Just a moment, I have to think.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, it was Aunt Susie and Uncle John. I can't think of the last name. Ledford, Ledford.
Ledford. Oh, okay. And Uncle John Ledford. Okay. And that was on your mom's side or your dad's side?
It would have been on my mom's side.
Mom's side. So when you had a pretty big family and kids all together. Can you tell me, so how many of the kids came up with you? Did everybody move up from Kentucky?
Well, no. My two baby sisters were born here in Michigan.
Oh, they were?
Dwight was he was the baby when, we came to Michigan.
Okay.
And then my mother had Marilyn and Karen.
And they were born, Marilyn and Karen were born in Michigan?
Right.
Okay. Did all the other kids come with you from Kentucky, the whole family? I didn't know how old the boys were at that point. Okay. Can you tell me, we'll just do this real quick for your family. Can you tell me, like, in order of birth, your brothers and sisters' names?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you.
Dolly was the oldest. Then Ray.
Okay.
Ray.
And if you can, just tell me the year they were born. if you know, or their birthday if you have it. If you have any of it, don't. I don't
have that before me.
Okay.
I can give you, though, in order how they were born.
Perfect. Go ahead. So Dolly's first.
And then Ray.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bill. William.
Right.
And Rob. And then Al. Then Dwight. And I was before Dwight.
Okay, so you were in between Al and Dwight.
That's right.
And then Dwight is number 7. Marilyn is number 8.
Uh-huh.
And Karen is the baby at number 9.
Right.
9 kids. Oh, boy.
Yeah. 1, 2, yeah. And then we lived at a little house in Novi where Karen was born, and how we happened to come to Plymouth was that my sister Dolly was a salesperson for Norma Cassidy. And Norma, she just loved my sister Dolly.
Really?
And she always called me her little namesake, Norma. And anyway, my sister Dolly happened to hear of this place for rent on Maple Street. So my father went, and we rented the house and moved there. Well, my dad rented I don't know how many years. And I can remember this man coming out, and he was painting the house, and I asked him why he was painting, and he says, well, it's my house. And I said, but Mr. Perkins, this is our house. He said, no. He said, this is my house. And I said, well, you're wrong because it's ours. Well, years later, my dad, I guess his wife didn't want to give it up, but my dad got a call, and my oldest brother, rushed him to his bedside, and he was so bad that he could only make an X. But Daddy bought the house at that time. After he'd rented all those years, then he bought the house.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, but it was all meant to be.
Sure. So you guys ended up living there in that house for, how long did your parents end up staying in that home?
Well, we ended up, 1977 is when my mother died, and the house then was sold.
Oh, okay. So you guys were there from pretty much about 1939-40 through 1977.
That's right.
Okay. And so can you tell me a little about, let's just say, how about your neighbors? You had the Hood family living next door. And
that's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about how your brothers or sisters, anybody play with the kids, or your you had told me before a little bit about. Go ahead.
They were probably. I've lived a lot of places, known a lot of people. You'd never find a finer family than the Hood family. And I don't care who you'd meet, they'd have to tell you that if they told you the truth. Mrs. Hood was the most pleasant person you'd ever want to meet. And her children, I never heard her admonish them in any way. They just seemed to know what she expected, and that's what they did. Now, you didn't see their father much. He worked in some upholstery, cleaning, or something business, and he would leave early and come home late. But she, the children, because our yards were connected, and their lot went back a little deeper than ours, but we played ball and stuff like that. But I can honestly say that they weren't allowed to come into our home or anything. Like, they could play out in the yard. And they had, Howard was the oldest. Then they had a daughter, Jane, and she was a good-looking girl. And you and I discussed being the fairer skin,
Yes.
She was, and I can remember, she was, of course, years older than me, but I can remember looking at her and thinking, what a nice, good-looking girl she was, and that she never had a boyfriend, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't go to the school dances, which I lived for. And anyway, she would have done anything. Mrs. Hood was very, very kind to my mother because of all of us. And you would have thought that she'd have found fault with all the little Mohegans running around, but she never did. And she was kind. She was just really a good neighbor. And Kenneth, you didn't hear much out of him, but of course, then Lawrence and Dwight, my baby brother, they were the best of buds. They were together constantly.
That's excellent. So what did those guys as good friends? Well, first, What did I saw something on a photograph, and you said that they kind of had nicknames for each other. What did they?
Well, he was Hoodie is for Lawrence, and Dwight he called him Whitey.
Whitey and Hoodie.
Yeah, Whitey and Hoodie.
Cute.
Uh-huh.
So, what were some of the things that the kids did when they played? So, when Dwight and Lawrence were playing, what was some of the stuff that they would like? How did they interact? What did they do? Were they playing sports or hide and seek?
Oh yes, they were always out in the yard. It was outside all the time. It was baseball and tag and all that stuff. And what is Annie overthrowing the ball over the house and I don't know what all. But then on the weekends, that was Mrs. Hood. I think they went to Detroit or someplace, wherever their families were, and then back, on Monday. And she was a school teacher in Ann Arbor. And so they were all during the week, you know what I mean? They walked the chalk, so to speak, but they play after school. And I was over there in the middle of them. It was my brothers and the Hood kids, but never Jane. She never came out and played with us.
She just stayed inside?
Yeah, she was just, I don't know. Maybe she just felt she didn't belong. I don't know that, but I know one thing. I've said it before. I miss Mrs. Hood. I wasn't around. I think I was living out of state when she moved, and I never got to see her again. I hated it so because I truly loved her.
Very cute. And you were saying like the kids didn't come in the house. Is that just Mrs. Hood didn't want to put anybody out or put anybody in a situation? You're just like, they'll play in the yard and they'll do stuff. And is it?
There was just no difference. But
yeah.
Yet I was young enough to realize that they just didn't come over.
Mm-hmm.
They could have. Everybody else ran through the house and everything, but you wouldn't find them doing that.
I imagine your mother and father would have trouble figuring out how many are in the house when you've got such a large group of 9 of you running around anytime. If some other kids came mixing in there, you're like, well, they're just our kids too.
I remember so well. I worked for a gentleman once, and he was writing a book on, I can't think now. Just won't come to me. But anyway, he felt my personality. I guess I had a strong personality, and he came out and he said, Norma, could you tell me, were you more like your father? Could you tell me, or were you like your mother? And I said, my father was very strong. I said, after all, when he spoke to us, he meant business. And he says, oh, then you're like your father. I said, wait a minute. I never heard my mother say, wait until your dad gets home.
She could take care of it on her own, right?
Yeah, he never could figure that one out.
Oh, my goodness.
We had very strong parents. My mother was one of the strongest people to health-wise and everything. And my father worked 2 jobs all his life for all the time for us. And he worked out to Burroughs, and he walked to work every morning and walked home at night.
Wow, that's pretty big. So he was at Burroughs for many of the years that you guys. Is that the first? Yes. Is that the job that he received when you guys came up here?
Not when we first came up here. I don't know just what he did, but I know that's where he ended up working. In fact, my sister the other day found his old wallet, and there was his Social Security number and things like that.
Oh my goodness.
Kind of touches you,
Right, Dad's old stuff. That's pretty neat.
My parents, though, they agreed. No one ever, said if Daddy issued an order, that was it. He laid down the law, and but my mother was very strict, and her only prayer was that when she came to Michigan, was that she could come and be near her church, if she could just live near her church. And when we came to Plymouth, she belonged to the Church of the Nazarene, and she could have, if need be, she could have walked to the church.
Oh, nice.
And I feel that prayer was answered completely. But in many ways, I remember the morning that the war broke out. I do remember this.
Okay.
And she came in and sat down on the edge of my bed, and she was sobbing, and I didn't know why she was crying. I couldn't understand, and I was, here I am, just a child, but they were saying, read all about it, and of course the war had broke out, and Mama knowing, having the boys and at that age, that what she was in for, and I look back on it now and I understand it. I sure didn't then, But I can remember another thing. When I would walk home from school, it was heartbreaking because, the star would be in the window, and it wouldn't be long that you'd hear maybe one of them was gone, and it took its toll. All over. But Plymouth was that small knit town where you knew everybody. You knew everyone. And but I can tell you, I've traveled quite a bit. I've been all over the states. I lived down in Florida for many years. But of all the cities in the United States, I'd pick Plymouth because that, to me, is home. It's beautiful. And I always think of that song. You're much too young to realize, but during the war, they played that song, I'll Be Seeing You. Mm-hmm. And it said, I worked at the drugstore. I had to get papers to go to work up at the drugstore. What's the name of it up in town? Wiltsey's.
Wiltsey's.
It's still Wiltsey's.
Yep.
And I worked there, and they'd play that song in the small cafe, the park across the way, and it was like it was my town. And I just literally love the place. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. And the only reason I'm out here in South Lyon is that they decided I should live near my daughter.
I get it. Well, you're not too far away. A little quick car ride, and you can get yourself back to Plymouth anytime, right? Someone can drive you in. Well, so your mom knows. I mean, she has 5 boys, and she knows the war is breaking out, and basically all the boys are of age that they're going to be looking to draft or enlist your brothers. And can you tell me anything about like how it went when any of your brothers started to enlist?
First of all, Bill went immediately and signed up for 6 years in the Navy. And then Ray, of course, he was right at draft age. Rob was, I think, just finishing up. He had gone up to Hope College, and he came back here to finish up school. And I don't know, but right at that time, it was when he had to go anyway. So he went out to San Angelo, Texas, is where he got his training. And then Al wasn't old enough, but he lied about his age to get in, and he was close to the age. And I remember that they told my brother Ray, the oldest, they were going to let Al go, but he had to stay with his brother no matter where he went.
Oh, wow. Did they stay together then?
Yes, they did. They were on those PT boats. I know that.
PT boats? And so Al wasn't able to finish high school or anything then because he would have left.
No,
altogether.
And the older boys were out, before we came to Plymouth. They weren't in school, Plymouth. Rob was the first to graduate from Plymouth.
Okay. And so I know Rob seemed to have like a pretty incredible career. What did he do? He was a pilot, or what was it?
Yes, he was. He was a pilot, and he did the refueling in air. You know how they do that. Okay. And he had a card here. I've got it here. When he went over to Ann Arbor, he became a recruiter for many years for the Air Force.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah. And
then Dwight ended up getting into, was it during Korea? Was he doing something at that point?
Well, he went, same thing. He went to sign up and he wasn't of age, and then he waited. And the minute he could get in, he got into the Air Force. And I don't remember too much about, all of that. That was kind of when the war was winding down. I just don't know, and I don't have anything to ask. But
right.
There's no one to tell me but it was many and many a year. I guess one of the things I remember most was that you'd get your letter. Of course, it never was a spot where they were. It just said always New York, New York. I can remember that, stamped at the top where your mail came in. And my brother Bill, there was years before I heard about him. He was injured seriously at one time, and but they came home and they were in good health, and they were so blessed. That's all I can tell you.
And Bill was in the Navy, right? Bill and Ray were both in the Navy?
Yes.
And so was Bill in the Pacific, or was he in the Atlantic, or in the European theater?
I don't know. I'll tell you what, this is a strange thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just about a year ago, his son got in touch with the family, and he had been in service and had his records, and he says, I have all of my dad's war records,
Mm-hmm.
And then he died. He just died suddenly, my nephew.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I saw on Facebook that his wife remarried right away, and there's no way I can get
Sure.
But he had all of his records, and Bill was decorated. He really was, but I don't know. And those are just things that I can't tell you.
Sure. But you, so you talked a little bit about the flags that were in people's windows. Did you guys have flags up in yours?
Oh, I saw one. Someone posted one, and when I did, it just brought back. Oh, it was heartbreaking. That's all, because they always had that. That was that window that had that.
If it had a gold star, then you knew something bad had happened. Otherwise, you just had the other stars. So, do you remember any families, or do you remember any of the kids that were lost, or the families, like a person who had lost?
Well, I do remember one girl. She was a lot old. See, I had a lot of girlfriends that were older than me because I was young but worked uptown. And the one girl, she had a beautiful voice, and she sang, and I loved to go home with her after school. She'd play the piano. And I know her brother died, and they couldn't even stand that home. They sold the home right away and left.
Do you remember who the girl was?
Yeah, Nina Lawson was her maiden name. I don't know who she married.
Nina Lawson. So that's Keith Lawson's sister. Keith would have been her brother who passed away, and I think it's either her. It was her older brother, right? So I think she's still living in Plymouth. Right?
Oh, is that right? Now that's a surprise.
I will see if that's true, and if it is, I will see if I can get the contact for the number and just give it to you if you ever want to make a phone call, because she was
such just the sweetest girl, and could she sing?
Really?
And anyone that could play the piano and sing, I followed them around like a puppy.
So you like the music, huh?
Oh, yes.
Did you play any instruments, or did you sing yourself?
No, I didn't have the opportunity to take lessons, but that didn't mean that I didn't know every song. And
Nice. Did you? Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like working at Wiltsey's? Like, what did you do up at Wiltsey's?
Oh, I started out. I worked behind the fountain, of course, and I'm not very tall, and you know how they have they set up on the stools, and I'd have to get out and go out and go stand out in between those stools to wipe the counter. But they had two shows, and the show would let out. The first show, and all people would just pour in there. They had booths in there, and you really worked. I mean, but then finally, after a while, they had me come in on Saturdays, too, and let me work over on the other side selling magazines and cosmetics. And my mother was deaf on makeup and stuff, and, man, I got my first tube of lipstick. I want to tell you, I put that on thick, but I sure took it off before I got home.
You didn't want strict mom to find out how much lipstick you had on.
My mother knew everything, but I thought I was fooling her.
Smart lady. Smart mom. Well, that's good. How about your time in school? It says you loved the dances. And so what were some of the things that you enjoyed about going to Plymouth High School or Plymouth schools?
Well, first of all, we had the most wonderful class. I can't think of anyone that wasn't just tops. We had our 50th, the 60th. I think we had the 60th. And I was surprised on our 50th class reunion how many came and how wonderful they looked. I mean, we just had good stock, I think.
It was a good year, the birth year of 1930. That was a good year.
Yeah, it had to be a good year. But I still hear from various ones of them. And I have a dear friend. He graduated from there, and I've always kept in touch with him. But on our last...
Who was he? Who was the guy?
Gerald Allen. He lives up in Oregon. And we always just, I don't know, we talked a lot. But our class was outstanding. We really had... I never really took account, but it really was. Everyone just seemed to have good health and so blessed.
Right. Now that's the one. Isn't Elsie Mae Trinka one of the class leaders?
Yes, Elsie Mae was always. She's that way in school. She was the perfect little, just like a little bookkeeper. She knew it all, and so she ran these, class reunions. And she did it right. She knew just what she was doing, and she would send out the invitations. I know one of the first times we went, we gathered, and then we went up and we went through the high school and we went over through the museum. And I never shall forget, pardon me, I walked in the high school and I said, gee, this looks little. I remember that being a big place,
Right.
And when you're a kid, it is. But
as you get older, it starts to come into proportion a little bit more.
That's right.
Wow. So what were some of the things in the years you were there, like dances or activities? Did you play?
Oh, are you kidding me? I'd work at that drugstore. I don't know what I made, but I can tell you one thing. That my brother Al, he always wanted money, and he asked me for it, and I'd say, I can't. I had a sweater laid away, and I was going to the dance on Friday night, and I was going to get that out. And he'd say, well, you've got to make up your mind. You either give me the money, or I'll tell Dad somebody's waiting for you at the dance.
Oh.
He was my Al, he was the thorn in my side.
What a good brother. He's going to bribe you for the money. He's got you beat.
It was an easy way for him to get it.
For sure. Was he working in town too? So I guess Dolly. So tell me about Dolly was working with Mrs. Cassidy or Miss Cassidy.
Well, she always said she was just her favorite sales girl. She had a wonderful personality. I never knew of anybody that didn't like her.
And how much older is Dolly than you?
Oh, golly, no. Let's see, she was...
8 years, maybe?
I can't. I just never even thought about that. I don't know. I can't think when she was born, but... Oh, she was born in, let me see, 1919, maybe?
Oh, okay.
And,
she had you
I'm not sure about that.
About 10 years older than you then. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's true. 10, 11 years.
Okay, and so she was working there and she was selling the clothing that Norma had at her store, Cassidy's?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I was saying, Norma Cassidy she really liked her. She adored her.
So did she work for her for a long time?
I think so. I think she did. Until she got married. She married a man and moved over to Northville, and but she always called her. She didn't call her Dolly. She called her Dorothy. She didn't think she should call her Dolly. She called her Dorothy. I don't know why. I thought Dolly was her name. It suited her.
That's how you knew her, right?
Yeah.
And you had talked a little bit about World War II before. So you got the beginning when Mom came in and she was sobbing and talking about the war was on. You'd be about the right age, maybe in high school. Can you tell me about when you learned that the war was over and what maybe happened in Plymouth? Can you recall any of that?
Well, of course, the whole world rejoiced. I don't. I just know that prayers were answered, and just seemed like no one could know. You know, we were rationed during the war, and we had done without things like you couldn't get tires for your cars, you know, and they had gasoline stamps. I heard of all of this, but we were free. We were just free. That's all. I remember that.
Very nice. Very nice. How about teachers in school? Were there any teachers that stood out for you that you liked?
One in particular.
Who would that be?
Ruth Erickson.
What is it about Ruth that makes you...
Oh, my goodness. She taught, I think it was the 6th grade. I'm not sure. And she would always... first of all, she not only was brilliant, she was so pretty. I remember looking at her and thinking, just striking, you know. And she would tell us, she'd say, all right, now if you get your lesson done in time, I'll tell a story. And she told a story, like the Tale of Two Cities, and she would even, you know, play the characters. And I wouldn't have missed school or missed that for nothing in this world. And she was so good to me, so kind to me, because she knew, like I had real long hair, and she would, a lot of times she would brush my hair through if something was happening or little things like that. She cared, but I loved her. I truly loved Ruth Erickson. She was the best. I had a lot of good teachers, but she stands out and always will in my mind as the best. Nice.
Did you ever get to stay in touch after you were out of there? Did you ever see her again after having her?
No. Just never thinking about it.
Yeah, we did name a school after her over here, so that was.
Oh yes,
that was a good one.
You know by that. She was that way with everyone, though. She wasn't just me, but I just remember it so. It meant so much to me.
Excellent.
It was little things.
How about? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How about high school time? Was there anybody that stood out there as at least something memorable for you, or?
Well, I just never found fault with anyone.
Yeah, just had a good stock of teachers. Would you have your principal would have been?
And we had Mr. Bentley. I remember him as being a principal up there at school, I think. Anyway, I don't remember too many. You know, I mean, I know their names and everything, but school was school.
But not stories.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think you remember more when you're little and you start school, you know. One thing I do remember well, when I first went to school, the teacher would ask me to stand in front of the class and read all the time. I did not know why. And the kids would laugh at me.
Oh, boy.
And I thought, well, I know I'm reading it right, and I don't know why they're laughing at me. And, of course, she told me I should read, and I was doing what I was told to do. And it was a long time before I figured out that they were laughing at me because I talk so Southern.
Still had that. You kept that Southern accent a little bit all the way with you, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
But that was hard on a little girl.
Sure. Yeah, something different it wasn't like the rest of the people in the community, I imagine.
No, but they, I just thought maybe I was doing something wrong, you know, and that didn't figure.
How about after school stuff? I know you went to dances and things. Was there any athletic events that you guys would go to or stuff like that?
Well, we were just, of course, my brothers and I, we had to go to work. I didn't get to do much when it came to after school stuff. It meant just get to work and get the job done, get home and go the next day. But
right.
There couldn't have been a happier family, I don't believe. So everything was. I look back over my life and I think of it, and it was hard when Gail came up and I read the names off. Because of the circumstances in our family, we were probably closer than most families.
Right.
my brothers were always trying to protect me. I remember so well my first prom that my brother Rob took me down to 5 Points, and they measured my dress for the prom, and he paid for it. And then I remember walking by a store once in Northville at Christmas time, and I looked up in the window and I said, boy, that's a pretty dress. I was with my brother Ray, and Christmas, that dress was wrapped under the tree. Those are things that I cherish, but it's hard for me to talk about my family, and I hope that I've given you information that I don't know if anybody else wants to hear about it. But.
Well, I can tell you I've done 100+ interviews, and this is one of the best. So you got me going.
Well, I thank you for that.
Well, and it's excellent. Yeah, I really, truly appreciate it. I think it's a wonderful story of your family's move up here from Kentucky to good job opportunity, to a good town that you cherish, to good neighbors with the Hoods, and your family's service to country is just incredible. And I thank you so much for, I guess, just giving me the opportunity to hear it.
Well, Darren, I'd never dreamed that there was someone like you out there that was going to give me a call and I was going to tell you everything about my life.
Well, I'm glad you shared it because it's been fun.
And I hope I get to meet you sometime.
Well, you tell me sometime. I've got the summer off. I'd be happy to come over there and have a soda or something one time.
All right, I will. Take care, Darren.
If you come to town, make sure you've got my number. You feel free to call because I just live in Canton. We'll meet for a lunch.
All right. Maybe I'll meet you up at Panera with my daughter.
You tell me the date. I'll find a way to be there.
Thank you, Darren.
Norma, thank you so much. You have a wonderful summer.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.